Welcome back, everybody. Weren't those beautiful deities today at Haridas Thakur's? They're just effulgent and very merciful. And just being in the samadhi of Haridas Thakur was a thrilling experience, wasn't it? Yes. How was the book distribution and the Harinam Sankirtan? Do you have anything more descript? Yes. It was easy breezy. Okay, you were apprehensive, but then your apprehension was assuaged.
Completely.
Okay, good. Mukadavind.
Maharaj, I was just seeing these two girls. They don't know any language, they don't know anything, but they just followed your 5-step approach, and they were much more successful in distributing books and also collecting huge donations. So I was just seeing that how this works here.
Yeah, there's a lesson in that somewhere. Sometimes we can get in our own way. If we find the proper source of knowledge and guidance, then if we take full shelter and we're simple in that way, then we can be fully empowered. Yeah, nice. What other experience did you have, realizations? Hare Krishna, Subhadra. We'll bring it to you. Delivered in 7 seconds or less, or your money back.
So in America, sometimes I get on the mental platform about asking for donations, but I like it here because you just wait. Like I just stand there and wait and keep trying to repeat that line, or just, then they give.
We're trying to invent a system for America too, so hold tight. I think that would be Nobel Prize worthy. Okay, now I'm getting signals. Everyone has to move up. 7.3 inches. Let's take 3 more realizations from the Sankirtan and 3 realizations from going to Srila Haridas Thakur's Samadhi. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So when I have them repeat the mantra, most people are very receptive. So they take the book and they give donation. Then I ask them to repeat, do you know Hare Krishna mantra? Everybody says, oh yeah, I know. But then they don't. So I have them repeat and then test it, and they do it. So that was very heartwarming.
Fantastic. Haribol. Okay, let's have a few more. What was it like? Malini. Right up front.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. As usual, it was an amazing experience. But there's one thing I noticed, that some of the times they asked for books that we didn't have, but we still were able to give the Jagannath sticker and the lollipop. So I thought, why don't we ask donation also without the book? And I showed them the donation and just the mountain pose. So one lady, she gave me 500 rupees for just a sticker and a lollipop, and somebody gave more too. So I was thinking, even if they were not able to get the book of their language, at least we have an opportunity for them to engage in this service. So I just thought that was nice to continue.
Great. We can add that to our repertoire. And that's an interesting area, because I remember last time when we came out of there, it's distinctively Bengali. Did you notice that? It seemed to me, and I remember from last time hearing ahead of time the scouting report that it was going to be a Bengali area, and it held true today, because people would sometimes look at the book in Oriya and then just sort of have a blank stare until we give them Bengali. We should be able to tell the difference, though, between a Bengali and an Oriyan, shouldn't we? Okay, one more. What was the Sankirtan like? And then we want to hear from anybody what you see, hear, feel when you went to Haridas Thakur's Samadhi. Ranshore.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
One person came up to us asking for a book on the glories of following different Ekadashis, which I've never personally been asked that in the West, on the street, or anywhere else. But it just reminded me, like, when people are in the Dham, they have that inherent piety and desire to engage in Krishna consciousness, but they don't have any sort of guidance. It reminded me of that verse, Shruti Smriti Purana Adi Pancharatrikam Vinna, where it says that if we're trying to practice devotional service without guidance from the scriptures, then it's going to cause havoc in society. So it's important that what we're doing is not necessarily establishing the spirit of serving Krishna within them, but rather giving them the framework to use that spirit in the proper form. So it's a very different mood in which we go out here, but it's equally important.
It's an astute observation. The culture is here. Many people have piety. Yesham twantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam tedvan muhanir mukta bhajanti mam dradar, and they seem enthusiastic about it. And adding that element of Shastra for guidance is the one missing part. As much needed here as anywhere else. Thank you for that. Now, 3 observations about what it felt like to go to Haridas Thakur's Samadhi. Bhaktivatsal.
I was touched by the 4 women that walked in when we were singing at the end. After the lecture, we were singing. The 4 women that came in and started dancing, and the smiles were ear to ear. And they were singing and dancing, and they started to jump a little. I was so excited just to watch them.
Who is ululating?
Ooh, she was good.
Because whoever it is, we should hire him out to train everybody. That was the loudest ululation I ever heard in my life. Yeah, that is such a uplifting experience to see people's reactions to Harinam. In the West, having a seat where I can watch the reactions, I find to be the most edifying of all experiences. Is just watching how the holy name touches them. But there's a special element here too, that people feel Krishna, he's our Krishna, or he's our Jagannath. When you're in Vṛndāvana, he's our Krishna. When people are here, he's our Jagannath. And then when they see other people taking joy in chanting the names of their Lord, they become doubly ecstatic and want to sing, dance, and they go into ecstasy, seeing that other people are glorifying their Lord. It's a very personal thing. Yeah, thanks, Bhaktivatsal. Fantastic. Let's have a couple more. What did you see, feel, or hear? Sharing means caring, according to the Salvation Army. 1, 2.
Hare Krishna. As soon as I enter in the temple arena and really pay the obeisances of Haridas Thakur Samadhi, I immediately thought of it just made a quick moment of how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu carried the Haridas Thakur's body, and the last right, and then how all the associates of her Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doing the dancing and the kirtans. So that came, and then took the darshan of the deities, right? And I see the Nityananda Prabhu and Gauranga Prabhu in the pause of chanting. So that reminds me how they saw in their own examples, how the holy name and chanting is very, very important.
So when you walked in, you remembered the pastimes that took place there.
Yes.
And you became absorbed in that when you walked in the Samadhi building,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's good.
It's beautiful. Thank you very much. A couple more. Yes. Pass the mic.
Hare Krishna. I can be open and honest. When we entered, I was pretty jet lagged.
Point it right towards your mouth because you get maximum. If you put it on the side like this.
Like this?
Like this,
Yeah.
straight, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to be open and honest. I was pretty jet lagged, so I was trying to keep myself, listen to the whole lecture and then participate in the kirtan. But I think there are quite a few times, unknowingly, my eyes closed and I was trying to keep myself awake. But I think what I wanted to share is, so that was not in my control is what I felt. And then as we went through the kirtan and as with your wonderful kirtan, Maharaj, I think towards the end of it, I got so involved. And I think because of the dham, because of the place and because it was Haridas Thakur's Samadhi, I think personally I felt goosebumps by the end of it all, which again I felt was not in my control. So it just was so different when I came in and how the dham has the effect, and just being part of the kirtan and the association just makes such a difference.
We did give that warning ahead of time.
So Haribol.
Haribol. Okay, all the way to the back. Oh, I thought it was you.
So I really like that.
Did the volumes go way down?
I really like that Haridas Thakur chanted three lakh names, which is 64 rounds times 3, and it was just amazing to hear how Haridas Thakur and Srivas Pandit were begging for the holy name to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
So, what attracted you to the idea of 64 times 3?
Like timetables?
That's a good way they could teach it in school, the times tables. And the other part? No, the second thing you said, besides the chanting.
It was amazing to
begging.
hear.
What did you like about that? About how
Haridas Thakur.
in his song, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said you should have to beg for the holy name.
When you explained how the kid kept on following.
Yeah. Kid
For the
followed
one.
Kṛṣṇa Sakha from one township to the next until he finally gave, and he ended up giving a big donation because that's all he had. Thank you very much. Nice observations. Very nice. Yes, Gopal.
Hare Krishna. So one observation I made was while we were on that junction, crossroads, doing Harinam Sankirtan, it was very ecstatic to see so many devotees passing out books, traffic coming, tractors, all kinds of things happening simultaneously. And then I looked up, and Ram Roy Prabhu was waving out of the ISKCON temple, and then I looked behind, and there were two or three Matajis had come out of their room onto the veranda, and they were dancing while the kirtan was going on. So I felt like that was something you'd read in Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Bolo bolo hari bolo. It's especially powerful in those city scenes or crowded areas when the holy name is benedicting everyone, bouncing off of walls, and it amplifies the effect for the chanters to be amidst that and to see the effect everywhere. Everyone wants to dance. It's so important also because we have to test our mantras. As in Vedic times, it said that Brahmins would test their mantras to see that they were working properly. They had ways of bringing animals back to life by mantra and so forth. Prabhupada talked about in a lecture while we were in Mayapur how there was a Muslim person who had siddhi in chanting a mantra for taming cobras. And he would be called anytime there was a cobra infestation, and he could pacify them by his mantra. And then he would gently take them away. And Prabhupada talked about how there were some medical students had heard about this phenomenon. And they didn't believe it, so they went there to visit the man and said, this is not empirically verifiable. We're dubious about your powers. And so Prabhupada explains how the place where they're visiting, the man had many snakes, and he let them out. And then Prabhupada described how these medical students, scientists, were jumping to and fro because the snakes were moving around the room. And then the man said, as long as I'm here, they won't harm you. And Prabhupada then said, and this is a mundane mantra. He said, not everyone can chant that mantra and tame a snake, but he had perfected it because he had practiced again and again since the time he was a child. So he said, then what to speak of the Maha Mantra? He said, you also have to practice throughout your life. And then he described how we should chant according to the directions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, avoiding the 10 offenses, and we should practice throughout our lives. He said, because that mantra, it gives full perfection, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And as to the testing of the mantra, those who had, in the Vedic times, brought animals back to life with the mantra, then they could see, oh, we have perfection in chanting the mantra. And when we take out the mantra and we chant it, we see through other people the effect of it again and again. And then it gives us more faith to be more aware that Krishna is in the mantra. And then we want to give it out more. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. I got really interested while we were singing the Narada Muni to read something to you all from Prabhupada's purports. Because it's nice in the evening to hear directly from Srila Prabhupada in his purports. But since we were talking about Narada Muni, I wanted to read something from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And for 20 points, which thing do I have open right now? 20 points to all my friends. This is from 1st Canto, 5th chapter. It starts with Sutta describing a meeting between Srila Vyasadeva and Narada Muni. Sutta uvacha atatam sukham asina upasinam brihatstrava devarshi praha viprashim vina pani smayan iva. So Sutta said, Sutta uvacha ata, therefore, tam, him, sukham asina, comfortably seated, upasinam, unto one sitting nearby. So there's two sitting together. Brihatstrava, greatly respected. Devarshi, the great rishi among the gods. Praha said, Viprashim, unto the rishi among the brahmanas. Vina pani, one who carries a vina in his hand, smayan iva, apparently smiling. Sutta Goswami said, thus the sage amongst the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the brahmanas, Vedavyas. Prabhupada's purport. Narada was smiling because he well knew the great sage Vedavyasa and the cause of his disappointment. As he will explain gradually, Vyasadev's disappointment was due to insufficiency in presenting the science of devotional service. Narada knew the defect, and it was confirmed by the position of Vyasa. Text 2. Narada Uvacha Praharsya Parasharya Mahabhaga Bhagavata Kachit Atmana Pratitushyati Sharira Atma Manasa Evava. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara, Narada inquired, "Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization?" Prabhupada's purport. This was a hint by Narada to Vyasadeva regarding the cause of his despondency. Vyasadeva, as the descendant of Parashara, a greatly powerful sage, had the privilege of having a great parentage which should not have given Vyasadeva cause for despondency. Being a great son of a great father, he should not have identified the self with the body or the mind. Ordinary men with a poor fund of knowledge can identify the body as self or the mind as self. But Vyasadeva should not have done so. One cannot be cheerful by nature unless one is factually seated in self-realization, which is transcendental to the material body and mind. I'll repeat. One cannot be cheerful by nature unless one is factually seated in self-realization, which is transcendental to the material body and mind. Text number 3. Jignasitam susampannam apite mahad adbhutam kritavan bharatam yastung sarvarta paribrimhitam. Your inquiries were full, and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. Purport: the despondency of Vyasadeva was certainly not due to his lack of sufficient knowledge, because as a student he had fully inquired about the Vedic literatures, as a result of which the Mahabharata is compiled with full explanation of the Vedas. Text number 4. Jignasitam aditam cha Brahma yat tat sanatanam tatapi shochasyatmanam akritarta iva prabho. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Purport: the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra compiled by Sri Vyasadeva is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature, and it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly. So there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So why should he lament? Text 5. Vyasu uvacha asyeva me sarva midam tvayuktam tatapi natma paritushyate me tanmulam avyaktam agada bodham prashamahe twatma bhavatma bhutam. Sri Vyasadeva said, "All you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of one Brahma, who is self-born without mundane father or mother." Purport: in the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying the body or the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind, and that is the root cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a personality like Narada to solve the root cause of all despondencies. Why Narada should be approached is explained below. Savai bhavan veda samasta kuyam upasito yat purusha purana paravaresho manasaiva vishvam surjatya vatyati gunar asangaha. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. Purport: a person who is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord is the emblem of all knowledge. Do we have a research team here? Look up where 100% comes from. I would like to know when that idiom started. Such a devotee of the Lord is in full perfection of devotional service. Such a devotee of the Lord in full perfection of devotional service is also perfect by the qualification of the personality of Godhead. As such, the eightfold perfections of mystic power, Ashta Siddhi, constitute very little of his godly opulence. A devotee like Narada can act wonderfully by his spiritual perfection, which every individual is trying to attain. Srila Narada is a 100% perfect living being, although not equal to the personality of God. Mike over here.
Hare Krishna. 100%, it's from South Asian English, and it means 100%, complete or total.
100%. Text 7. Tamparyatan arka iva trilokim antascharo vayuriva masakshi paravare brahmani dharmato vratai snatasya me nyunam alam vichakshva. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds, and like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive Supersoul. Please, therefore, find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. Purport: transcendental realization, pious activities, worshiping the deities, charity, mercifulness, non-violence, and studying the scriptures under strict disciplinary regulations are always helpful. Text number 8. Shinarduvacha vavatanuditam prayam yasho bhagavato malam yenai vasao natusheta manyeta darshanam kilam. Sri Narada said, "You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless." Purport: the eternal relation of an individual soul with the Supreme Soul personality of Godhead is constitutionally one. The eternal relation of an individual soul with the Supreme Soul personality of Godhead is constitutionally one of being the eternal servitor of the eternal Master. The Lord has expanded himself as living beings in order to accept loving service from them, and this alone can satisfy both the Lord and the living beings. Such a scholar as Vyasadeva has completed many expansions of the Vedic literatures, ending with the Vedanta philosophy, but none of them have been written directly glorifying the personality of Godhead. Dry philosophical speculations, even on the transcendental subject of the Absolute, have very little attraction without directly dealing with the glorification of the Lord. The personality of Godhead is the last word in transcendental realization. The Absolute realized as impersonal Brahman or localized Supersoul, Paramatma, is less productive of transcendental bliss than the supreme personal realization of his glories. The compiler of the Vedanta Darshan is Vyasadeva himself. Yet he is troubled, although he is the author. So what sort of transcendental bliss can be derived by the readers and listeners of Vedanta, which is not explained directly by Vyasadeva, the author? Herein arises the necessity of explaining Vedanta Sutra in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam by the self-same author. Text number 9. Everyone okay? Yes. Better than okay. Yata dharmadayashcharta muni varyanukirtita natata vasudevasya mahima yanuvarnita. Although, great sage, you have very broadly described the 4 principles beginning with religious performances, you have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. Purport. The prompt diagnosis of Sri Narada is at once declared. The root cause of the despondency of Vyasadeva was his deliberate avoidance of glorifying the Lord in his various editions of the Puranas. He has certainly, as a matter of course, given descriptions of the glories of the Lord, Sri Kṛṣṇa, but not as many as given to religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. These 4 items are by far inferior to engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. Sri Vyasadeva, as the authorized scholar, knew very well this difference, and still, instead of giving more importance to the better type of engagement, namely devotional service to the Lord, he had more or less improperly used his valuable time, and thus he was despondent. From this it is clearly indicated that no one can be pleased substantially without being engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is clearly mentioned. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of self-realization, or the Brahmabhuta stage. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:30-20. If someone look it up. After attainment of this Brahmabhuta stage, one is satisfied. But satisfaction is the beginning of transcendental bliss. One should progress by attaining neutrality and equality in the relative world, and passing this stage of equanimity, one is fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the instruction of the personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahmabhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to Vyasadeva that he, Vyasadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. This would cure him from gross despondency. Does anybody feel grossly despondent? Only one person admitted it. Okay. Let's see. Text 10. Na yadvachas chitrapadam harer yasho jagat pavitram pragranita kadichit tadvayasam tirtamushanti manasa na yatrahangsa niramantu shikshaya. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode. They do not derive any pleasure there. Purport: crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. The fruitive workers or passionate men are compared to the crows, whereas the all-perfect saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as the passionate fruitive workers take pleasure in wine and women and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in the places where crows are assembled for conferences and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water nicely decorated with stems of lotus flowers in variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. Nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it is not possible to bring them up to the same rank and file. Similarly, there are different kinds of literature for different types of men of different mentality. Mostly the market literatures which attract men of the crow's categories are literatures containing refused remnants of sensuous topics. Do you want me to say refused or refused? Refused. Vṛndāvana? Refused. Sounds better. I'm going to do it again. Mostly, the market literatures which attract men of the crow's categories are literatures containing refused remnants of sensuous topics. This reads like poetry, doesn't it? They are generally known as mundane talks in relation with the gross body and subtle mind. They are full of subject matter described in decorative language, full of mundane similes and metaphorical arrangements. Yet with all that, they do not glorify the Lord. Such poetry and prose on any subject matter is considered decoration of a dead body. Spiritually advanced men who are compared to the swans do not take pleasure in such dead literatures, which are sources of pleasure for men who are spiritually dead. These literatures in the modes of passion and ignorance are distributed under different labels, but they can hardly help the spiritual urge of the human being, and thus the swan-like spiritually advanced men have nothing to do with them. Such spiritually advanced men are called also manasa, because they always keep up the standard of transcendental voluntary service to the Lord on the spiritual plane. I'll just read that again because it was such a nice sentence. Such spiritually advanced men are called also manasa because they always keep up the standard of transcendental voluntary service to the Lord on the spiritual plane. This completely forbids fruitive activities for gross bodily sense satisfaction or subtle speculation of the material egoistic mind. Such literary men, scientists, mundane poets, theoretical philosophers, and politicians who are completely absorbed in the material advancement of sense pleasure are all dolls on the material energy, of the material energy. They take pleasure in a place where rejected subject matters are thrown. According to Swami Sridhar, this is the pleasure of the prostitute hunters. But literatures which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoyed by the Paramahamsas, who have grasped the essence of human activities. That's 10 verses and with purports. And now I'd like to see what reflections or questions you might have. What impressions did you take away? What thoughts did it bring to mind? How would you like to expand the conversation? Yes, here, right here.
Hare Krishna. I was just thinking that I'm so excited. Every sentence is so amazingly placed, and Srila Prabhupada is not mincing any words. And currently, I'm in the 10th and I'm going to the 11th canto, and then just by reading these 10 verses, I'm so excited to finish and come back to the first canto and reread this again after so long.
Yeah, that's the emotion expressed by the sages at Naimisharanya. Swadu, swadu, pade, pade. How's that verse start? Huh? Vayam tu navratipyama uttama shloka vikrame yashrinvatam rasagyanam swadu, swadu, pade, pade. They said there's such a taste in this that we want to go on hearing and hear it again and again and again and again and again. That will be the result of hearing, and will noticeably make advancement when, or I could say, we're noticeably making advancement when we're more and more eager to hear. Dharma swanistita pumsam vishvaksena katasuya no pariyad yadiratim shrama evahi kevalam. Dharma swanistita pumsam vishvaksena katasuya no pariyad yadiratim shrama evahi kevalam. So that it's mentioned that there are many duties that one can perform in human society, but if they do not provoke attraction, the original words there in the Bhagavatam, for messages of the personality of Godhead, then they're considered absolutely positively a waste of time, complete waste of time. And as a means to increase one's eagerness to hear, Sutta Goswami also says, Shushu Sho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. When one renders service to great souls, then there's an increase of desire within the servitor to hear more about Krishna. It rises naturally. Jiva Goswami writes in his Sandarbha that there's a one-to-one correlation between advancement in devotional service and one's desire to hear. So it's easy to judge how one is advancing. You can judge for yourself. And that is, how eager am I to hear? If you have this same enthusiasm that Hadai Pran Prabhu is expressing, that I want to finish it so I can start it again. This is a sign of spiritual health, that we want to hear the transcendental topic more, and we want to hear it repeatedly, and it gets deeper every time. Spiritual health. Let's hear what else. Ooh, nice. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Who's running the mics around? Oh, you got it here. Okay, go ahead, Shankar.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. It really stood out to me when Prabhupada says that when the explanations on dharma, artha, kama, moksha is so dry, that the writer himself is so despondent, what the readers will get out of it. And then here is Harai Pran Prabhu who's saying, I want to finish all the cantos and come back to the first canto. So that says a lot about the bhakti literature, that they are so full of rasa that it keeps bringing us back. And that's what Narad Muni is asking Ved Vyas to do. So that stood out to me. That if the writer is so despondent, what will we get out of it?
Nice. Okay, that was 2, 3, 4. Okay, well, if you got the mic, go for it. It's Tide Goes to the Runner.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So the Vyasadev's necessity for a guru, so that's very similar to Arjuna's need for Krishna as his guide. So that was looking for external perspective is a very important thing which we often don't do, even in our work life or anything else, and we don't get the clarity. So that, and also getting a boss to tell us very bluntly that this is where we are and this is where we are dealing in refuse, like you say, Bollywood and cricket and politics. So that was a reflection that we really need to seek external perspective when we are despondent. At the same time, there is a need for converting, moralism is one thing, but transform beyond moralism is something was also a takeaway from this episode and the dialogue. That dharma, artha, kam, moksha is one thing, but there is a lot more which can transform us. And all of us can be transformers with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Raise your hands. Oh, you've got it. Go for it.
Hare Krishna. It is interesting that Krishna reveals himself as the spiritual master externally and the Supersoul internally. And this conversation reveals that Vyasadeva was despondent. So internally, Supersoul was guiding him that there is something more that you've missed. And externally, the relationship with Narad Muni, that he inquired from him what is the root cause, was so sweet that Narad Muni also, instructed him by invoking that curiosity about the problem, what he missed in writing this. And it's at such a high level that Vyasadeva, who's writing all these literatures, even at that level, the relationship between the disciple and the guru is so evident and so important in our parampara.
Thank you very much. The observations are rolling in.
Hello. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj, in the 9th verse, the last paragraph of the purport, after liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of Brahma Bhuta. I'm always confused between Brahma Bhuta and in order to get pure devotional service and liberation and pure devotional service are not interrelated as such. So I just needed some...
It's a reference to the verse itself. Brahma bhuta prasannahatma na shochati na kankshati samak sarveshu behite mad bhaktim labate param. This is the time at which one has a point of departure from the material world. And then Prabhupāda this is mentioning that perspective of the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, that mad bhaktim labate param. From that liberated position, then they entered into a devotional service. Can you reiterate your question about that? Because just first, that's what the verse says, and that's how it's used in many different places.
So what is the Brahma Bhuta stage? Is it the Anartha Nivritti stage, or what is the characteristic of it?
Yes, you could consider it what stage did you say?
Anartha Nivritti, or beyond that?
Beyond that, because there's a way in which the verse is talking about a liberated person who's no longer concerned with the body. No shochati, no kankshati. During anartha nivritti, there's concern and still attachments. Even though one's eager for more advancement, there's a way in which one may not have the ability to do more. Jata shraddha makatasu nirvina sarvakarmasu veda dukkha makankamam pratyagye pyanishvara. As Kṛṣṇa explains in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam to Uddhava, there's an interim stage, anartha nivritti stage, in which the person has awareness, Veda dukkha makam kamam, knows that kama leads to misery. Veda, he knows that. Dukkha makam leads to misery. I said, jata shraddha, there's faith. There is faith. Jata shraddha, matkatasu, one knows that by hearing about Kṛṣṇa, that this is the goal of life, has full faith in the transcendental vibration. Nirvina sarvakarmasu. And the person's also disgusted with his or her involvement in the material world. But pratyagye pyanishvara, Ishvara means Ishvara Parama Kṛṣṇa, like the Supreme Controller. It also means the ability, the power to do something. Like Shaknoti Haivaya Shodhum Praksharira Vimokshanat Kama Krodot Bhavam Vegam Sayukta Sa Sukhinara. The happy human is one who has developed the power to overcome Shaknoti Haivaya Prakshar Vimokshanat Kama Krodha, all these lower modes and urges created by the lower modes of nature. So Pratyagyat Pyonishvara, although he knows everything, he still can't do it. But then Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na Shochati na Kankshati, one who's factually liberated from those urges. It's also described in the progression of devotional service, which is enacted by hearing and chanting, as you all know, from Srinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantaksto Hibadrani, Vidhunoti Suritsatam. Nashta Prayeshu Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavatutama Shloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava, Kama Loba Dayashchaye, Cheta Iter Anavidam, Stitam Sattve Prasidati. At that time, as it goes through, one begins the process by hearing and chanting. Krishna is helping from within the heart as the Vidhunoti, who's helping sort out what's good, what's bad, and helping the devotee to overcome the inauspicious things. And then there's an interim period there, described as prayeshu, almost completely destroyed, but it's still lingering. But then there's a demarcation in the next verse, tada, which means at that time, there is a time at which the modes of passion and ignorance are no longer present. Stitam sattve prasidati, our acharyas confirm that this sattve is not the goodness of the material world, but it's called Shuddha Sattva. Has no tinge of the lower modes of nature. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yad Iyate Tatra Puman Apavrita. At that time, Lord Shiva says, then one is able to directly see Krishna, one who's no longer moved by the lower modes of nature. And of course, the real definition of, or an additional information of the arrival at the stage of Nishta, which of course the word means, it's cognate with the word stand in English. Nishta means you have a standing now in devotional service. As Prabhupada says, you're not feeling the pinching from the lower modes of material nature, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. And there are 5 obstacles that one has to overcome to come to Nishta. One of them, the first, is laya, which means sleep. It doesn't mean if you have jet lag and you fell asleep during the class. Although it could mean that too. But it's generally means that there's a way in which when performing ecstatic devotional practices like hearing Krishna's names or hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, then one feels sleepy. And it's a very odd phenomenon because if somebody was watching, I don't know, a high-speed chase or someone just told you won the lottery, you probably wouldn't fall asleep. So it has more to do with our internal state and our sense of not being interested in Krishna. That's a kind of sleep, laya. And then comes distraction. Is one distracted while hearing? So Prabhupada describes in the first canto, 4th chapter, first canto, 4th chapter, and I think it's second to the last paragraph, purport, about rapture. Rapture is hearing. It can occur only when one's lifestyle has become clean. There's no touching with the senses with material objects for the purpose of trying to enjoy them anymore. And then one can come to the point of hearing with rapt attention. Before that, the modes are agitating. For instance, people complain vociferously about not being able to concentrate while chanting japa. It's the most common complaint on the planet Earth. And the cause is rajas. If there's rajas in the mind, then the mind's going to be distracted from one thing to the next, because that's what rajas is. It's distraction. Look at this, look at that, look at no. Always trying to see something else in succession. And it's been sped up by modern technology, I dare say. I was looking out my window and I see young men walking down the street. They're together, even 3 in a row, and they're all looking at their phone as they're walking. Hope they don't get hit by a motorcycle or something. It's a distracted state that we're in rajas. And so when you notice that you're no longer distracted, that's also a sign that you've come to nishta. It's such a relief, because distraction is torture and focus is nectar. That's why people talk about even mundane activities like writing. They'll say, if you can actually sit down and write, which is almost impossible. When I wrote a book a while back, the first time I tried to actually finish a book. It's one thing to write a book in your head, I found out. Kaishori was my editor for years. She said, what do you have? What do you have? I said, so much, so much. She said, send me something. I was like, well, I don't know about that. And so I read many books about how to write a book, and they all said, go back and write. One said, get some glue, put it on your chair, just sit down, and then you can't get up. Literally, they said that. That's how you write. But if you, as many people say, if you can get into that mode of writing, it's like flipping over to the other side of distraction, and you can stay absorbed in it, you feel peace. That's why people feel peace watching a soccer game. It's the stupidest sport in the world. Sorry, everybody. I know it's an offense. But it's just men kicking around a ball. And the reason people feel happy is because they just keep watching the ball. What sport do you only get one goal during 90 minutes, if that's even what it is? That's ridiculous. Sorry. I know you all hate me after this, but it's a fact, and everyone just watch the ball, and then it's like, God, I feel better. But then it springs back. And writing and so forth, the mind can come more to a sense of stillness. But in nishta, this is a very high state, where one has standing in the practice of devotional service without any distraction. There's nothing else on the person's mind except for staying steady in the practice of devotional service, no other interest, really. Of course, that's kind of describing asakti also, but that's a much more acute symptom, or the symptom is more acute in asakti. It's all-consuming, and those are other stages, but in nishta, no distraction. And then there's a very interesting obstacle, which is described as disinterest, which in English we have this 3 little letters for, M-E-H. Like, hey, you want some cabbage? Meh. Which means like, no. Yeah, no. And although I'm not sleepy, I'm not distracted, no distraction, but just not into it. Where's that come from? Kind of what we used to call causeless unwillingness. I know everything. You know everything? Yeah. Why don't you do it? It's like, I just don't care. And then there comes the bubbling up of various qualities that take us away from Krishna, like anger. They're in the their behaviors stimulated by lower modes of material nature, and there's a kind of an embeddedness there, and they come up at various times. And then there's the senses themselves, which Kamadinam katina katida palita durnideshas. The devotee prays. And these are bad masters. They're always telling me the wrong thing, and I've always obeyed them. And still I'm obeying them. That's the idea in that interim stage in anartha nivritti. So when one actually can noticeably, one could diagnose oneself, or actually in that coming to Nishna, one can diagnose oneself, because you may be startled to find out when you sit down for a long reading of the Bhagavatam, you're suddenly in rapture and you're not sleepy. You're so interested in it, it's the last thing you want to do is sleep. That's Nishta. And when you're not distracted, an M80 goes off outside your window and you still keep hearing, or whatever it may be, the Nishta stage. So when we get free from the lower qualities, which is generically being described in Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, Nashochatina Kankshitimi, even that Prasannatma is there. That's one of the symptoms mentioned after Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava Kama Lobadayas Cheta Iter Anavidam Stitam Sattve Prasiddhat Evam Prasanna. Same thing, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. Then you're happy for no reason. There was an author that came to see Ramnath Swami in Silicon Valley, and she wrote a best-selling book called Happy for No Reason. I didn't read it, but I like the title a lot. Some books are like that. You see the title and go, I get it. I don't have to read the book. And so that one was indicative of the prasannatma. There's no reason to be happy. I just am, cheerful, joyful, because I'm no longer harassed by the material world. I'm not feeling the weight of it anymore in Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. Now I'm happy. The mind's naturally happy in its normal state, Thank you for asking a question. Let's see, was there one more? Yes, Subhadra.
Haribol. I was just wondering why he deliberately avoided describing more qualities.
He's trying to preach. So this is a conundrum that everyone's trying to preach. And there's a way in which he's trying to reach a wider audience. So he's deliberately toning it down. Pavani Bhakti's going, yeah, I've been there. I mean, she hasn't really been there that much because she preaches so directly, but anybody who's preaching to audiences that are not naturally interested in Krishna consciousness or have context for it, realize that you have to tune it. So first of all, you don't get kicked out. I mean, when we started going to Intel, who's here who was at Intel when we were going there? Remember, everyone saying, now don't say God, don't say Krishna, don't say this, that. Of course, it seemed they gave a little more leeway after a while. But my talks there were so boring and stupid. But what can we do? They said don't say anything. So we tried. We worked around the edges and we tried, you think of it in different ways. Then maybe it'll bring people closer and such. And maybe they'll like us more, and maybe they'll relate with yoga or whatever. And that's a big conversation. Ajay Advaita Maharaj once described as, if you're ever in a shower, yeah, like the ones here, they have 2 knobs on them. At least mine does. That hot water is really hot. And you want to get it right, like not too. And you're kind of adjusting back and forth. You're just like, how long? What's taking so long? And that's a kind of adjusting the message so that people get it. And your hands are always on the knob because people are fickle. And we try to present according to context that they have or don't have and create context. And so he was trying to catch a wide audience. I mean, Mahabharat's a page turner, but nestled inside is the Bhagavad Gita. That's a pretty good trick. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to have festivals on the outside. It looked like a cotton candy and Ferris wheels, but as soon as you walk closer, you kind of get drawn in and closer, and then inside there's a heavy bhajan going on and preachers and everything like that. The idea is to pull people closer. So that's why he was deliberately presenting in such a way that many people could understand it. And so this is a topical verse, a topical chapter for us to understand. Number one, that unless we develop an interest in Krishna directly and are able to present Krishna in such a way, as Prabhupada says at the beginning of chapter 4, the first verse in the purport, he describes you have to present what the previous acharyas have given without screwing out any new meaning. Don't speculate. But you have to do it in such a way that people in the local group that you're talking to can understand it. So you have to adjust it. And he said, that's called realization. Rameshwar was telling me, he's one of the early great preachers of the movement, helped through his vision and activities to expand book distribution significantly all over the world. And he was talking about how Prabhupada wanted all devotees to write. And the main place Prabhupada asked devotees at that time to write was in the BTG. He wanted devotees to write because it helps solidify your realizations, and he wanted them to submit articles to the BTG. And the BTG went through various phases. And there was a phase in which the editors tried to get a little more edgy, and they thought, we should make this more relevant to the people in general. And it crossed a line at one point because then Prabhupada said, okay, I'm taking it back, and I make it more direct. So these things are always going on, trying to come to the right point. Also, the other point I wanted to take out of that anecdote from Prabhupada's instruction about Back to Godhead magazine, when somebody asked him about writing topically, he said, yes, but it requires expertise. You have to be very thoughtful about how you present. And so this is relevant to all of us, this chapter. Okay, that's it. No more questions, no more thoughts. Yes, all the way to the back. 1, 2. Back wall.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. You just mentioned Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, which triggered a question for me. Is Mahabharata a mundane literature because it contains all mundane topics? Or is it a spiritual literature because it contains Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's topics as well? Or is it both, and it depends on us being either a crow or qualities of a crow or a swan, and we take whatever our qualities are. Would you be able to?
You're giving me so many options. Should just be multiple choice. Well, we can't say it's a mundane literature. Although Narada is. I'm not going to say it. Narada is saying it. But it's not, because the Bhagavad Gita is there, as you pointed out. There are some difficulties for the Mahabharata. It's been interpolated many times. You'll find various versions. You find a North Indian version, a South Indian version, and over time things got changed, interpolated according to culture. The part of the Mahabharata that's not been changed or touched at all is the Bhagavad Gita. How do we know this? It's because there's a historical record of all the acharyas commentating upon it over many, many years. And therefore it's been carefully protected under their watchful eyes. It is the important parts, the kernel within it. And that's not to say there aren't other important parts of the Mahabharata, and it's about Krishna. and Krishna's devotees, the Pandavas. So it's not a mundane literature. But it is interpolated. So if you want the best part of the Mahabharata, since there's not much time in life, read the Bhagavad Gita again and again. Not many people do. And it's such a nice practice to read it every day and become expert in Bhagavad Gita. And then, of course, the ultimate authority on that ties together all literatures is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Amala Purana. This is the opinion of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are the Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam is the perfect literature, and it's perfectly intact. So if you have more time, read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Again and again, it's unlimited. Rasanath Prabhu.
What strikes me repeatedly is the courage that Vyasadeva had when he told Narada to search out the fault. And it was very confronting. I felt a chill, which then gives the opportunity for the Bhagavatam then to be spoken. And so as a follow-up, my question for you is, how do we develop that kind of courage and intellectual humility to be corrected? I was thinking that Vyasadeva demonstrated what you always say, I love to be corrected.
Yeah, by appreciating the fruit of sincerity, because beyond complete sincerity and willingness to hear the truth about one's own faults and be corrected, and be sincere about aligning oneself with the opinion of the Acharya, one's spiritual master, then there's cognitive dissonance. And when one becomes a stita dhyar muni, dukeshu anavigna manaha, sukeshu vigataspriha, vitaragabhaya krodha, stita dhyar muni ruchite. Krishna talks about this quality of self-realization, that one's mind is fixed in authority and is willing to come back to that selflessly, without having to be a Muni. Regular Munis, as Prabhupada points out, and this is true in the academic world, have to come up with something new. In fact, Radhika Raman Prabhu was telling us when we visited his home, that was a luxury, staying there 3 days. We just talked and talked and talked and talked. And it was just so nice. And one of the things he told us one day on the way, we were driving back from a hike in the Subaru. That's what you get if you live in Utah. And on the way back, he was talking about intellectuals and academics. And he was saying how these extremely intelligent people can give up everything, even sex, he said. The one thing they can't give up, intellectual property. They'll die for it. Because they're so smart. It's a hindrance, actually, to be so smart. I don't have that problem, luckily. And he just said that they become so attached that they came up with an idea. And they're brilliant ideas, but ultimately in the vision of the Bhagavatam, as we just heard, they're basically refuse, because they come from the speculative plane. So Stita Dhyar Muni is somebody who's evolved to the point of realizing his or her own self-interest as being completely 100% aligned with Krishna. And in that there's a great relief, because then it doesn't mean you're not thoughtful, independently thoughtful and make decisions, but everything comes back to whether it's aligned with Krishna or not. Vyavasayatmaka buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushaka hinantascha buddhayo vyavasainam. If your mind is chaste, which is a term Prabhupada uses in the Bhagavatam, chaste hearing, and you chasten yourself that I follow, this is the Stiti Dear Muni, I follow the instruction as it's given, then such a person has one-pointed attention, whereas the other person, bahu shaka hinantascha, cognitive dissonance. So by tasting sincerity and seeing that it's much better than presenting my false self to the world or trying to protect it. It's really hard trying to protect one's image as a great soul. I have a god brother, name will go unmentioned, but he's been around forever, and he's been through a lot. And I just remember being around him, and he's matured to a state where he's vulnerable. He's not trying to put a mask on and say, this is who I am, protect some imagined position that he has. And it's so disarming to be around somebody who's been down before and then realized that, okay, I'll just surrender to Krishna. And also be who I am without any feigned sense of something greater. And what to speak of how it might feel if I did it myself. What does it feel like to be chaste and just fixed in that? So I think we can think about it and compare the two states of being surrendered and also being surrendered, but there's a little filigree that goes with that, to try to be something we're not. And also just the purification process of, as Krishna says in the Gita, nirmana. There's a lot in that. It's one of the 5 where Prabhupada says how to overcome weakness of the heart. That's what he says at the end of the 15th chapter we read yesterday. I mentioned it yesterday. How do you overcome weakness of the heart? He said the first 5 verses. That's in the first 5, isn't it? Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5. That's nirmana moha. So nirman means give up that sense of being the center and just take Krishna's center. That was a long, convoluted answer, but I was trying to think about it as I was talking, reaching for it. Okay, Gopal.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for the question.
CCT, cultivate, contact.
Contact, cultivate.
Time.
And time.
So how much time?
A lot. In fact, that's the answer that Kapila Dev gives to Devahuti. She has this complaint. She said, I understand self-realization, I know you're God and all that, but this is hard stuff. It seems like I'm my body, and to give up this conception of me being my mind, and it's like, how do you do that? It seems impossible. And Kapila Dev was very straightforward. He answers and he says, it's possible. In fact, that's what all the Shastras say. In fact, that's what Vyasadeva says in the Vedanta Sutra. He says, and Prabhupada quotes this in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, of course, Vyasadeva says, of course it's possible. It's even logical, because all the Shastras tell you to make advancement and come to the perfection of life. Therefore, it's possible. Otherwise, the Shastras wouldn't mean anything, he says. And so, your question was? How long time? Yeah. So Kapila Dev says to Devahuti says, you should hear and be aligned in service. He said, you should do this for a long time. And in the commentaries by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the 6th canto of the Bhagavatam, some people, he's asking rhetorically, why is it that Bharat Maharaj took 3 births? And he says, because people who have a high goal take a little more time because they want complete refinement. Think about what that means. Going back to the writing example, I came down to a formula when I was writing the first book that I had to, every chapter was like a long essay or an essay. And I had to complete the first draft, and then I had to do 3 more personal edits of it before I could give it to an editor. And I knew I had to go through all that. And same in our lives. We have to go through a lot of editing. Don't think you're going to get it right on the first draft. You do it, and then you got the ideas there, but you got to edit. We have to edit our lives, and you do it once, twice. I'm not saying how many times you have to do it. That's how many times I had to do it. 3 times, intense editing, marking it up with a pen. No AI. Didn't exist. Marking it up with a red pen and then going back and working with it again, then and again, then again. And so as long as it takes. And actually, if we know we're in the process, then it's joyful. Krishna says in the Gita that it's Raja Vijaya Raja Guyam Pavitramida Mutamam Pratyakshavagamamda Susukam Kartamavyam. When we know we're working on ourselves and we're actually taking the steps, that's when we feel happy, even if we're not there yet. It's when we're pretending that we're making the steps, but we're not actually working on it, when we feel some cognitive dissonance. Pray a lot, pray hard, take as long as you need. Okay, last one, and then we're going to go back to bhajan style.
Hare Krishna. Not a question, but a very short reflection, if I may. I was very inspired by the story about the beggar. And I thought, what better than to be a beggar at God's door? And I've just wrote a very short poem, if I may share.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Supersoul in our hearts, watching us play our parts. I have spent an eternity on the branch of your tree. You were always there, me, too busy to care. For far too long, I have ignored your song, caught in the insanity of lust and depravity. I am but a beggar, you, my divine neighbor. Please help me turn around so this lost soul can be found.
I have a question. Where have you been all our lives? That was fantastic. I love it. It was clean and very, it really sounded nice to the ear, but it was impactful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Vishnu Gada Prabhu, your comments overall, as sweeping as you'd like to make them, or as detailed, anything you
I
heard?
had a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Thinking about this pastime with Vyasadeva receiving Narad Muni, and he gives him great respect, and then he gets chided by Narad Muni, as a spiritual master would. I was wondering was he Narad Muni Vyasadeva's spiritual master before this incident? Because I was just assuming that he was, but I don't know. Have any? You follow the question?
Yeah, but your questions are always so hard. I always have to go do research afterwards.
I apologize.
I just assumed that he was, because how natural the scene is when he comes in. But I'll have to look it up. And I did research the Shiva thing earlier. I can say something about them. Please say more, Vṛndāvana Prabhu. Lokaram, observations. What do you want to add?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. I'm just really happy to be here. I have nothing much to say. I loved the poem. I think also about writing and this remembrance of Rameshwar Prabhu. It's so many different ways that can take form, and especially now with AI, it's tempting to cut corners, but it can really be a powerful part of sadhana and internalizing. That's another thing Srila Prabhupada emphasized, was write down realizations, and that can help us process what we're hearing. It's a form of smaranam when we write things down after we hear it. And then if you share what you write down with others, it becomes kirtan. So it's really a valuable practice to keep alive, especially with all these technologies coming out that are threatening our intelligence by supplanting it with artificial intelligence. So we want to keep our intelligence intact. Writing is a really powerful way to do that. And it's essential for Krishna consciousness. We can't become Krishna conscious without having an intelligence. So we want to keep ours alive. I'm not trying to be too doom and gloom. I use AI a ton, but I also do a ton of my own writing. So I try to keep it balanced. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes, and it's a ubiquitous topic everywhere. That's what ubiquitous means. Authors are discussing this same topic because it's a challenge, as everyone said it would be. The greatest satisfaction is realizing one's connection, as in the poem, with Supersoul giving intelligence and realizing that it's coming from him, and that kind of intelligence is forthcoming for those who are sincere and engaged. And I appreciate your points. This similar point that Radhika Raman made when somebody asked him about AI in writing. He said, don't deprive yourself of the opportunity to strain, to develop a thought. In doing that, then your own ability to represent those ideas becomes more organized. You can hear editors when they talk. You go, hey, you're an editor, right? In fact, that happened to me. I heard somebody speak and I go, do you edit? And they go, yeah, how'd you know? It's like just the way you talk. Organized, articulated speech, carefully crafted, moving along from one thought to the next. But anyway, Prabhupada emphasized this. Everyone should write. Write down your realizations. That's what we gave you, that tiny little book. Actually, I like to write on bigger pads. Like one of my pads up in my room is huge. It's actually meant for artists. There's no harm in writing on it. But it just gives me a lot of space. And I always emphasize use a legal pad. Those are the yellow ones. They're longer. There's a psychological advantage, so you're not trying to cram everything in. And taking time, have a place for all your ideas to land. If they come in and you don't catch them right away, it's just like a rare butterfly or something. I saw it. It's like, no, you didn't. You couldn't have. They're extinct. I was like, no, I saw it. It's like, yeah, right. And same with ideas. Like, they just go away so quickly unless we catch them. And it's a gift from Krishna. I think that's something Tejas, one of Prabhupada, he had a lot of association with Prabhupada. He has so many practical things to say. So many that if you ever talk to him, you got to have a lot of time on your hands because he's effusive and it's all nectar. But he was telling me about how Prabhupada instructed him that in Kali Yuga to remember means to write it down. As he insisted with his assistants that they write things down and don't just say, yeah. Like those waiters, you know. Not that I go to restaurants, but I have been in one before. You know, they'll come by and say, yeah, I got it, and they come back with everything wrong. So I carry in my pocket this little notepad. I've had different notepads. I used to use moleskin. That's vegan, by the way. It's not a real mole. But I came up with this one because it's got a spiral binding on it. It doesn't even have a brand name on it, so I can't be accused of product placement at this point. But I can pull the pages out if I need to, and it's really kind of thick and a nice, it's got some nice texture, good feel to it. But I don't leave my room without it. Even if I cross the hallway, I carry it with me, and I also have my pen. Because this is, you've heard me do this shtick before, I know. It's a magic wand. This is how we manifest everything good in our lives. Because everything comes from Supersoul, from within, and then if we don't, out of gratitude, catch it and write it down. It's like, thank you, Kṛṣṇa, for giving me that idea. One unique idea from Supersoul can change your whole life. And it also gives you fodder for preaching as well. Because nothing is so powerful as a unique idea that came from Supersoul to present. If you find it from somebody else, you can make it work. But if you got it yourself, like you were meditating deeply on your japa and it came to you, complete, and then you write it down, you have something for life that can become your brand because Kṛṣṇa gave it to you. And then when you speak it, there's something different about your voice. So it's one of the practices Prabhupada gave us is to always be aware. Prabhupada had one of these, not the exact brand, but you can see his little notebooks that he carried with him. There's one on display in Vṛndāvana. We'll look at it when we go there. We'll make a pilgrimage to see the notebook. You could even see his little notations in there about what he wanted to do, thoughts he had, and so forth. But he was always writing. Every day he wrote something. So it's important. So we're relatively successful today, right? We had japa together. We went to the beach and shared ideas. We also had prasadam. We worshiped Tulsi. We had Guru Puja. We had discussion on Bhagavatam twice. We went to Haridas Thakur's Samadhi. We saw Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and Advaita Acharya. I mean, I'll never forget that. And did you see there's a picture of Krishna Balaram above the altar of, was it Nityananda? It's kind of an old picture, really charming old picture, but just the aesthetic in there when you see the deities and in those altars, it leaves an impression. And that's what we're here for, to take away an impression or several or a multitude of them. That becomes our real wealth. And then we can sing about it out of happiness. That's what we're going to do now. Right? Yes. Uh-oh. What? Oh, yeah. We got to do our chapter. Chad. And we just happen to have it, thanks Nirkula, we happen to have it right here in the book itself. Does anybody need? Oh, we only have 10 minutes left. What page is it on? 330. 330. What we're doing is, which are the verses we're doing? It's not the whole chapter. What? No, that was last time. Now we're going from 23 onward, right? They moved it because we changed months. We're going to do 10 verses. starting at, we're going to do 23 to 33, starting on page 333. Hope that's not confusing. Page 333, text 23. And the last 60 seconds, Hara, today is Shivaratri, unless somebody misinformed me. Hara is a name also for Lord Shiva. They both come from the same root, Hri, which means to take away. Krishna's, in the verse we read this morning, called, was it Mito Aga Oga Haram Harim. He's known as the Hari, who's Hara, who takes away. Shiva is also mentioned in many ways as Hara. And I'll go into the more details about Lord Shiva tomorrow, because we're done. And you all got to go because you got a date somewhere with Lord Jagannath. And now to Shraddha Devi Dasi to tell us what we've won. Please welcome her.
Yeah, I just wanted to also ask you to look around the walls and you see the posters. What do you think about that? So Guru Maharaj just loves posters, and it's my god brother Nitai Kripa Prabhu from UK who has designed all these posters there. So if we were to auction these posters, how much would you put that for? How about this Panchtattva? Any takers?
I'll take it. How much?
It's an auction. You can bid.
$500.
$500, $500, $500. Anybody else wants to take it for more?
As long as somebody carries it home for me.
Have you asked your mom? Mom's permission? I was just kidding. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that he has, he has spent many hours polishing these and printing those out, these lovely posters there. The broadcasting team, I just wanted to talk to you after the call is over. Maharaj, that's all I have.
Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shishi Gaurnitai, Shishi Panchatattva, Shishi Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, if you so desire, please instill in our hearts sincerity that directs us to always take shelter of you, to be honest with ourselves, and to be honest with others, and to always keep our intelligence fixed on your directions as our guide for how we move in the world. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpadrishcha.